So over the years, I've made a ton of drifting guides in GTA 5, talking through the theory behind how it's actually done, the best picks for drift cars that you should be using, as well as how to build them to maximize their performance. But in this video, I kind of want to take a bit of a step back and cover 10 assorted tips and tricks that I've learned over the years that I either haven't emphasized enough in my content or I just haven't mentioned at all. I think a lot of these tips should be pretty helpful for you guys regardless of your skill level or the type of drifting that you enjoy doing the most. As always, if you guys happen to go on and enjoy this video and find some of the tips helpful, feel free to drop a like on it, ask any questions, or drop your feedback in a comment down below, and also consider subscribing to this channel if you want to see some more GTA 5 drifting content and other content in the game coming very soon. So with all that out of the way, let's get started with these tips. Alright, so the first tip here I have is one of a few simple map and location tips that you can use to quickly get started with practicing your drifts without really having to worry about public sessions or annoying AI traffic. I've gotten hundreds of people asking me over the years exactly how to get a blank map of San Andreas without any traffic, and it's actually super easy to do on all platforms regardless of where you're playing. I will have the open map and the training map as an example that I created on Xbox Series X linked in the description of this video for you to go bookmark on Social Club, but for other systems, here is exactly how to do it. So first off, we're going to go and navigate to the creator in the GTA Online settings, and then when we're in here, we're going to go to create a basic land race. Now, once we're in the actual race creator, we're going to go into race details. We're going to set the basic stuff, the race title and description. We're going to take the photo to be used in the job description. These are all kind of requirements for actually publishing the job to Social Club so you could play it. And then still within your race details here, we're going to set the race type to standard or GTA. I'd actually recommend this a bit more if you want access to pickups and you would like to exit your car. You can also change the route type in here to point to point. This I highly recommend for being actually able to set up a successful kind of free roam map. After this is all set, we've got the point-to-point race all set up. We're going to navigate into available vehicles and we're going to make sure all classes for the drift cars that you want to practice with are selected. You can always set the default class to the drift tuning cars if you'd like, but it isn't really necessary as long as you can access all classes. Next up, we're going to move into ambient settings, and here we're going to set the time and weather to whatever conditions that you'd like, and you can also disable ambient traffic, pedestrians, and animals, all of which I would just recommend turning off. And I'd also recommend just leaving it on dry weather at noontime for maximum visibility, so that way you have the most consistent conditions possible. We're going to back out of here and then we're going to scroll down a bit, and here we're going to disable catch up and slipstream because these settings can really hinder your ability to do proper tandems. Next up, we're going to scroll all the way down to gameplay options, and in here we're going to make sure the disable wrong way setting is turned on, so that way you don't get the annoying message popping up on your screen when you're in the job. Since this map is really only for practicing, we're not concerned with checkpoint placement or winning or anything like that, and this message can be a bit of a nuisance, so here you can turn that off. With all these settings sorted, we're going to back out of race details and go into placement, and in here you can place down the race trigger in whatever open location that you'd like, as this is where you're going to place the starting grid, and then of course you can place down the lobby camera as well. Again, just another simple requirement. Finally, here we're going to navigate into checkpoints and we're going to place down our starting grid to accommodate whatever player count you'd like to practice drifting with. I typically set this to 30 just in case, and I can always change the grid dimensions to whatever I need so I can actually successfully place the starting grid down. You're then going to need to place down the next checkpoint at least 1 kilometer or 0.62 miles away, since that's the minimum point-to-point race distance. Now, the location of this checkpoint, which is also going to serve as the finish line for the race whenever you're done practicing, doesn't actually matter so long as it's placed at the right distance away. Then with all the checkpoints placed and with all the other settings set up, you can then back out of here to test the race, which just requires you to complete the short point-to-point run. And then when you're done testing the race, you can save it and then publish it to Social Club, so that way you and your friends can access it at a later time. Now, I know that ended up sounding a bit more involved than it actually is, but this process is super simple and it's the bare minimum that you need to do to have a clean and clear map of San Andreas to drift around wherever you like, making it perfect for practicing. Moving into another small tip related to the map is to attempt to drift on different surfaces and in different weather conditions, because they all have a good range of effects on the car's handling. Now, a lot of this we can actually change within the custom race map that we just set up. We've got the option in here to change the ambient settings to be rainy or snowy, which often act as a bit of a handicap and make cars a bit easier to get sliding in the first place, not necessarily requiring the mid-drive speed boost. There are also a couple other different driving surfaces that can make drifting for you easier as well, especially for beginners. The first one, which I admit seems really random, is actually drifting on the Vespucci boardwalk located here on the map, and this actually has a pretty slick wooden plank surface that feels like a really good halfway point between drifting on dry pavement as well as drifting in the rain. Another option would be to go back into into the race creator and place down some stunt raised track pieces, but actually inverted, because for whatever reason the bottom sides of these race pieces have a slick surface, and you can actually see these used a lot in popular drift oriented maps. Gonna quick tack on another thing for this tip. Another really good spot to practice is the LS Car Meet test track. Although you're a little bit limited, you can't like get out of your car to stance it, it still is a little bit more slippery than normal road surface, so it can be another good spot for you to practice and also tune your build at the same time, since you could take it back to the mod shop, you can change something, and then you can go back out on the track. Another good spot to kind of hone your skills and also to refine your tuning setup. Now, changing something like this, seemingly very small, I know it sounds like a weird and random tip, but the surface you're actually physically drifting on can help a lot more than you might think, and also definitely helps lessen the skill gap between certain players as well as the performance gap between cars, so I definitely think it's worth experimenting with if you're ever interested. Now, moving into the last map and location tip I've got here is to either make your own fully custom maps using the previous tips that we've discussed, and of course placing down some additional props, or to go on to Social Club and try some maps from other creators that they've shared. Although I've made videos covering over 40 spots across San Andreas' map that are great for drifting, it is also an absolute blast to unleash your creativity and to make a custom map by yourself, or to try one of the many thousands of custom drifting tracks that have been shared to Social Club. Maps can be bookmarked on Social Club by simply logging into your account on your phone or your computer, and then from here you can go in and do a simple online job search, and then from there you can find a race that you want to bookmark, you can select it, go into the details, and click bookmark. If you're looking for specific queries, you can always type in drift or the name of, say, an in real life drifting track like Ebisu if you want to try those maps out. A lot of the times there's actually pretty high quality maps as well. And of course the other option here is to just build your own map using the tools in the creator. And I want to emphasize this a bit more than I normally do, because the creator is probably the most underappreciated tool besides the Rockstar editor in GTA Online, and Rockstar actually adds features to it with almost every update, which definitely allows the caliber of custom maps to improve drastically. So if you've got the time for it, I think it's definitely worth trying out to make your totally custom drift track. I've also got some guides to kind of help in that process, linked by some reputable map creators down in the description if you want to learn a little bit more about this process. Now, next up, moving on, we're going to talk about some controller and gameplay tips. One trick I've recently learned, and I'm still practicing myself a lot, is called rolling your sticks, which drifters might use a lot, and you might hear it a lot used in games like CarX and Forza. Now, rolling your sticks essentially involves pressing the left stick forwards all of the way, and then smoothly rolling it counterclockwise to the left or clockwise to the right whenever you're steering during a drift. This strategy is generally a lot smoother, and both in terms of style and overall drifting feel, compared to what most people do, including myself, which is to simply flick the sticks to the left or to the right. I would highly recommend you guys try to learn and master the rolling stick method early on in your drifting progression, so that way it kind of becomes muscle memory. I speak from experience when I say that flicking the sticks is a very tough habit to break, and it's definitely been challenging teaching myself to almost totally rethink the way that I control my car during a drift. Now, although flicking your sticks won't put you at a massive competitive disadvantage, I think rolling your sticks is a great way to learn smooth car control, and also helps out if you plan on drifting in games other than GTA. Another controller and gameplay trick that I found to be really helpful with both low grip and drift tuning cars is to manually adjust the camera using the right stick to get a better view of your car and to combat the general jerkiness of the camera resetting itself. With any non-drift tuning car, the camera mainly stays fixed to the front of the car, and it always kind of adjusts itself to always be facing in the same direction as the front of the car. This makes it really hard to see things and plan ahead when you're drifting, because the front of the car isn't facing the direction that you're actually drifting in. Now, Rockstar attempted to fix this with the drift tuning cars, detaching the camera from the front wheels and allowing it to stay stationary as the car kind of pendulums or swings around it, which does help a lot in third person as well as first person drifting, but I still find that manually pulling back on the right stick very slightly helps drifting in all cars, so long as you keep your camera panning and movements in sync with your steering inputs. Pulling back on the right stick pans the camera upwards so you can see better the proximity of your car's front end with other cars or obstacles you might be drifting around, while smoothly panning it in the direction that the car is drifting helps you better plan out and visualize the line that you're following. This strategy does take a lot of muscle memory in keeping your steering and camera panning in sync with each other, while also having some level of ambidexterity between your two hands to keep the camera movement smooth and controlled, but I'd say it's a very worthwhile trick that will help your car control a ton. And another quick tip I'd like to tack on in here is to make sure that your vehicle camera height in the camera settings in GTA Online is set to high. This will also again help the camera be located farther up above the vehicle so you get a bit of a better bird's eye view, which also helps a lot in tandem with manually adjusting the camera yourself. Both are going to be incredibly helpful for your car control. Another really fun and helpful gameplay trick that now can be used with the drift tuning cars is the mid-drive speed boost to basically give yourself a massive power benefit. Now, if you're decently experienced already with drifting in GTA 5, you would know that the mid-drive speed boost is normally only used with low grip drift cars, basically acting as a way to force the bug with the car's gearing to get a momentary power boost, which you can essentially daisy chain together to drift through long corners. This original method involves briefly letting off the power to tap the handbrake in between second and third gear, then slamming back down on the throttle to basically force the speed boost to engage. Now, what's less known about the strategy of the mid-drive speed boost is that it can be used in all-wheel drive cars as well, so long as you tap both the normal brakes and the handbrake when you let off the throttle in between gears. Given that the drift tuning cars are all-wheel drive, this actually allows you to use the mid-drive speed boost with them as well. Although the mid-drive speed boost is a little bit more tricky to engage in the drift tuning cars because of the rear bias power split of the all-wheel drive system and the limited grip that these cars have, with enough practice you'll be able to seamlessly use it to connect together much wider and faster drifts a lot more cleanly and consistently, rather than transitioning unnecessarily or using left foot braking to artificially extend out your drift. Again, this is more of an advanced strategy and isn't necessarily required to drift the drift tuning car successfully and smoothly, but I think it's still a cool skill to have. The final controller technique, which I've talked about time and time again with the drift tuning cars, is called left foot braking, which essentially involves holding down the brakes while keeping on the power during a drift to smoothly control your car's speed and angle. This technique is especially helpful during tandem since it allows you to keep consistent distance with whoever you're leading or chasing, and is generally a lot less jerky than stabbing the throttle or tapping the handbrake, which disrupt the cars a lot more, especially given the all-wheel drive nature of them. It can also be used in precision drifting as well, whenever you're drifting in a tight space or you're trying to put the car in a specific zone or get close to a clipping point. It's generally a super valuable tool with the drift tuning cars so long as you use it sparingly. Basically what I mean by that is don't always be the guy slowing down the drift train and drifting needlessly slow by constantly holding down the brakes. Use them kind of as a tool and don't rely on them too much. Now, you can also use the strategy of left foot braking in low grip drift cars as well, but this acts more so as a backup to prevent your car from spinning out in high angle drifts or when you really need to pull your car back straight. In most normal drifting scenarios, tapping or holding the brakes will cause the car to grip up too much and it will slow down very quickly. But if you're ever way past the car's angle limits or you need to find a way to recenter the car in high angle entries or reverse entries, jump drifts, things like that, briefly holding the brakes can definitely help there too. Now, the last few tips I've got here relate to the cars that you're using for drifting. Now, the first major tip with your drift cars is to make sure you're choosing the right ones. Too often I see people pick absolutely random cars, sometimes even ones that are front wheel drive, and they expect them to drift just by throwing on low grip tires, and then inevitably they get frustrated they can't actually drift them and they stop trying altogether. Especially when you're just getting into drifting with GTA 5, choosing the right car is key for actually learning a lot of the skills required to do it successfully. Generally, I say the formula for a good drift car is to just use one with drift tuning, or to pick a car that's powerful and rear wheel drive to equip low grip tires on, but I do have multiple videos referencing specific cars that are definitely worth trying out if you're not quite sure where to look or what to look for. Now, kind of as a continuation with this, which I'd recommend exploring more as you start to get more comfortable with drifting in GTA 5, is to start diversifying your car choices. Now, whether you're bouncing between drift tuning or low grip drift cars, I always like to switch it up a bit to challenge myself and make things just a bit more exciting. It's really easy to get comfortable with one car and just want to stick with that one forever, but I think long term it's a lot more fulfilling just testing out a bunch of the other solid drift cars that exist in GTA 5. There are probably hundreds of them, to be honest. There are way more than you might expect, so definitely just go searching and you will find one that might be more fun than the one that you've learned in already. Once again, a lot of my past videos have a lot of good recommendations for cars that are worth trying out if you're interested in checking out those. Now, my final couple tips here is to first off not get too caught up in tuning or upgrading your drift car. I've explained a lot of the theory behind tuning both low grip and drift tuning cars in my past videos, but I'm going to generally summarize it once again here. So for low grip drift cars, these cars really only need maximum armor, engine, transmission, and turbo upgrades, low grip tires of course, and then you can slightly adjust things like the suspension level, you can stance the car via the interaction menu or manually with a weapon, and you can consider adding a spoiler. Now for drift tuning cars, these cars no longer see any benefits from pre-applied power upgrades, so all you really need to worry about with these is adding some armor for some extra crash resistance and lowering down the suspension to help limit some of the body roll that's present with these cars after the drift tuning upgrade. Now, there is a bit more nuance with other modifications that you can equip on a car, especially when it comes to aesthetic modifications like bumpers and other body parts as well as wheels, but overall these have near negligible effects on the overall driftability of a car. And this is not just my opinion. I mean, I've tested it and I've communicated that in my past videos, but this is also the general belief of the GTA 5 racing community, of course, expressed through voices like Bruffy1322. Generally, the agreement is that these upgrades do have very, very slight and isolated differences, and you would really only notice them if you were an especially skilled driver and you were trying to isolate the effects of certain upgrades. But nothing really is going to drastically impact the true characteristics of the car. And the same thing here applies with drifting. You're not going to be able to change up a set of wheels or add a bumper to a certain part of the car. That's not going to make or break that car's ability to drift. It's not going to have a massive impact. It might have a slight impact, but it's not going to drastically affect your ability to drift that car. Beyond the basic build formula that I've explained time and time again, the most important thing for you guys is to practice and get comfortable in that car. That's the thing that you need to focus on doing the most, and you don't need to overthink the tuning of it. It's really easy to get lost in that cycle of constantly changing out parts and not knowing if something is placebo effect or not, which is why I generally just recommend you guys apply the standard upgrades on the car without changing them. Just set and forget it and only go back and address those small things after you've gotten a lot of practice time in that car. My general TLDR of this all is to just don't overthink your upgrades too much. Focus on maximizing your seat time. Just focus on practicing the most, and I promise you will be successful regardless of the car you're using and the upgrades that you've applied to it. So those are 10 really valuable tips and tricks that I wanted to share with you guys to hopefully help improve your drifting even more here in GTA 5. As always, feel free to leave me any feedback and ask any questions you might have down below in the comments if you need more help, and do consider leaving a like on the video or subscribing to my channel if you'd like to see some more videos like this one. I really appreciate all of your continued support, especially during my time away over these past couple months. I'm really happy to be getting back into the swing of making videos, especially with what looks to be like a fun winter DLC on the way as well. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video.